Hey everybody, how you doing today? Matthew Billington with Big and Bright Inflatables.
Boz, Big Bright Inflatables.
We're gonna try to bring like a little podcast to you today. This is our first one, so we'll see how it goes. Yeah, we're bringing it like a pretty serious topic for our first one, though. I'm calling it the four F words. Okay, and let me explain that a little bit. So, God, it sucks right now. I want to quit. What do I do? I think a lot of business owners might be in that situation.
For sure.
Definitely gets that way. So here's the thing. We're talking about discouragement today, discouragement that leads to wanting to quit. All right. So in life, discouragement primarily comes at the midway point. So in business, you're not going to get discouraged when you're at your beginning. Everything seems fantastic. You have this wonderful vision of where you're going. You see the future. It's going to be beautiful. Everything is going to work out, right? And once you're, 100 feet from the finish line, once you see the ticker tape, you're ready to cross it, you're not going to quit there either. So you're not quitting at the end. You're not quitting at the beginning. But it's that middle ground. It's that part that gets tough. That's when the discouragement sets in and you want to quit. And so this isn't just exclusive to business. I
No,
mean,
not at all.
freshmen don't quit in college very often. Sometimes seniors don't quit because they're so close, right? But that junior senior year, that's when it really gets tough. You get bogged down. Other things that in life, shoot, they have this whole thing called midlife crisis, right? Men freak out, buy a sports car, quit their jobs, quit their wives, leave their families. They do all this crazy thing. It's the middle ground that all the discouragement and the frustrations and stuff set in, right? Career, same thing. If you've been at a company 50 years, and you're 2 years from retirement, you're not quitting.
No, probably not.
It's not going to happen, right? And marriage, same way. They call it the honeymoon stage, right? And then the hard part, the middle part. But I mean, how many couples that have been married 30, 40, 50 years you see get divorced? Like,
Doesn't happen.
doesn't happen, right? So it's that middle ground, right? And so many of you right now are probably past the honeymoon stage in your business, but you're not 100 feet from the finish line, and you're discouraged, and you're saying to yourself, "It sucks right now. I want to quit. What do I do?" Well, I got the four F words for you.
Right on.
Okay. All right. So the four setbacks that cause discouragement and make you want to quit. The first one is when something takes longer than expected. All right? When something takes longer than expected, you become tired and fatigued. So the first F word is fatigue. All right? When something takes longer than expected, you become tired and fatigued. So here's the thing. Our best requires rest. Does that make sense?
100%.
So what I mean by that is if you set no boundaries in your business, if you are going 7 days a week for 100 and 200 days straight, 270 days straight, like you're tired. All right. A lot of people don't want to take time off because it's lost money. It's lost potential for income. They think that their customers are going to get frustrated, so they don't take time off. But the truth of the matter is, you're going to lead to fatigue, which is going to lead to discouragement, which will make you want to quit the business. It is perfectly fine for you to do a few of these things. One of them might be say, hey, I'm taking a vacation in July, period. End of story. Book it out on your website and don't take a single rental. If you've got the staff to do it, that's great. But if you don't, close it out. Pick those times. I've got a few pieces of information to give about that. Or maybe it is, hey, don't double up as much. Don't do the flips on Sunday. Or I even had a set of customers who their whole way of doing business was that they dropped everything on Friday and picked everything up on Monday. That's the only rentals they would take. They didn't take any weekend rentals. They got their Saturdays and Sundays off, but they still made that other income. So there's lots of things that you can do to give yourself rest if you decide that you're going to control the business and not let the business control you. Okay. So back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was this guy named Frederick Taylor. And Frederick Taylor was like studying the workforce, and he eventually in 1909 he produced this paper called The Principles of Scientific Management. Well, it talks about a bunch of different things, but the one thing that I want to bring up here in regards to what we're talking about is that he found out that in a day's work, if you give your employees a break, that they're more productive. If you work them 9 to 5 nonstop, that they're not going to get as much done. But if you give them a break, throughout the day, they're going to get more done, right? Because our best requires rest. All right. So I was giving you a couple other examples. So my mentor, he runs a huge business. They do over $1 million a year, and probably closer to $2 million. He hasn't exactly shared his books with me, but I mean he's huge. Okay. But when I was doing the rentals, I was like, man, how much do you make on July 4th weekend? Like, are you flipping them Saturday, Sunday, Monday? Are you just like stacking the bills? And because I was working my people to death, and he's like, no. He's like, all we do is we take weekend rentals that weekend. We don't do anything on Sunday. We tell everybody we're dropping it on Saturday. We'll pick it up on Tuesday. And he's like, it is not worth the money to burn your people out. And at the time, of course, I'm starting out, so I was burning my people out. I was pushing hard, but he's right. He's right. Your best requires rest. So first F word that can lead to you wanting to quit and discouragement is fatigue. All right, sorry. All right, the second topic here that can lead to fatigue that causes you want to quit is when something is more complicated than expected. Okay, so if a project takes longer than you think it will, that leads to fatigue. But if it's more complicated than you think it does, it leads to the second F word, which is frustration. So long things wear you out. Complicated things frustrate you. So those are the first two F words. So maybe you're at the point where you're worn out, fatigued, and you're frustrated. Both of these lead to discouragement that makes you want to quit. So anything that you're trying to build, I don't even care if it's IKEA furniture, to be honest with you, right? Once it gets complicated, you want to stop putting it together. Have you ever
Oh yeah.
had a piece of furniture that just you want to pull? Well, you can't pull your hair out, but
Yeah, I've already done that. A lot of IKEA furniture here.
So, but even if it's like a business or a career or it's your marriage, okay? When it becomes complicated, when you don't understand it, whether you don't understand your spouse or you don't understand the next step in business or whatever it is, those complications lead to frustration, which leads to discouragement, right? Okay. So when we're talking about business, inflatable business in general, the way I want to, there's probably other complications that I could bring up. Maybe you don't understand your finances. Maybe you don't understand tax law. Maybe you don't understand how to do an LLC. Maybe you don't, and all these things are complicated. Like, I talk to a lot of people just setting up their insurance, doing their insurance application is complicated and they get discouraged, right? And it's complicated. It's a pain in the butt, but it's something that you have to do, all right? Okay. But I was thinking of it from this perspective also, because at the beginning you've got that excitement. Now we're in the middle. You've probably got your insurance in place. You've probably got the LLC in place. You've probably got those complicated things. But now it's just day to day running it, right? So what I was thinking is maybe you've complicated it by maybe you've got inflatables. Maybe you decided to do foam. Maybe you had concessions as well. Maybe you picked up a laser tag. Maybe you hire clowns. Maybe you do movie screens. Maybe you do game trailers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like everybody's wanting you to do all these things, and now you've ended up with all these types of complications instead of just being an inflatable business. I think back to I didn't do all of those things, but I did a couple of them. But I think back to even just how cotton candy machines complicated things, right? So yes, now we go to load our trailer. Now we got to figure out a place to put the cotton candy and to keep it from spilling and to all these things and tables and chairs and they just didn't pack on the trailer quite right. And then we would I'd get these phone calls from the crew and be like, hey, we were supposed to bring 18 chairs, but we only loaded 16. Can you drive these 2 chairs out there? Leads to frustration and it's complications. So maybe simplification might be a way to avoid some frustrations, right? So all these other things I talked about, that whole list of things, they're good things, But last week, Nick Glassett on Booze and Biz said it in a way that really made a lot of sense to me, is stay focused on inflatables, basically, maybe tables and chairs, but, basically inflatables until you're ready to start a whole second business. And then add that thing and treat it like a second business, promote it like a second business, advertise it like a second business. So if you're in the middle and you're frustrated and you've got all of these things, maybe it's time to simplify. And then when you have it under control and you're ready to start that second business, you can. He used the example of foam. Basically, he said if you are an inflatable company that happens to do foam, foam's not going to sell that great. But if you are an inflatable company and then you open up a whole nother sector, advertise with foam, treat it like a whole separate business, then you have that second business, which is foam. So some of you guys have just made your business too complicated. Let's just be honest. You've taken too many things. It's time to cut back. It's time to simplify. You're frustrated right now. You're fatigued right now, and it's leading to discouragement. All right. So sometimes less is more. Stop letting the business control you. Control it. Okay. Here's a side note on that topic, Boz. Trash multiplies when you aren't watching it, and it complicates your life. So I've got 5 kids. You've got 4 kids, right?
Correct.
We got a lot of kids. We got a lot going on. But even if it's not at home, if it's at work or whatnot, if you're not paying attention to it, I swear that the trash just multiplies. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? It's constantly, it just grows, whether it's in your house, it's in your office. Some of you guys, your trucks, your cars, maybe they're ridiculously dirty, right? So that trash in your life, okay, will multiply also. So maybe we're not talking about physical trash now. Now we're taking it to relationships. Maybe you have bad relationships. Maybe
baggage.
Yes, right. Maybe you have too many commitments in your life. Like maybe your kids should play one sport instead of 7 sports. Like we have 5 kids, so we have a rule: one sport at a time per kid. That's all we can handle, and quite frankly, it's still too much. So like there's some things, there's commitments that you made that are like the trash in your life that just multiply and multiply and multiply. That adds on to your frustration. So yes, this is a business principle. Maybe you've multiplied into too many areas in business, but it's also maybe just a life principle. Maybe you have too many credit cards that multiplied into financial problems, or too many debts that multiplied it. When you're not looking, it grows, right? All right, so recap. First F, fatigue leads to discouragement. Second F, frustration leads to discouragement. Number 3, when I start to doubt my own abilities, I'm going to get frustrated. Okay? So here's the thing. When a few things start to go wrong, maybe you start losing some battles, some things here and there, failure sets in. Okay, so that's the third F, failure. All right, and here's the deal. Failure is a temporary state. It's not a permanent state unless you let it become a permanent state.
Correct.
But failure is a temporary thing, okay? So failure, whether small and temporary, does lead to discouragement. And failure does tend to happen in the middle. You're gonna lose some battles. You're not gonna go 1,000 for 1,000. Like, you're just not, right? You can make the Hall of Fame by going 3 for 10 in the major league, right? In business too. If you get 3 out of 10 of your ideas are home runs or solid hits, like you're going to be very successful. But 7 of your ideas are just gonna fail. That's probably how it's gonna go. So when these temporary failures happen, you can start to lose confidence. And when you start to lose confidence, you start to say, like, why did I even start this business? Why am I in this business? You start to second guess yourself. You start to have lower self-esteem, and you start to think, like, I don't belong here. I need to get out of this business. Okay? But here's the thing, and listen to me. Everyone fails. I have failed numerous times. I have started multiple businesses before this that failed, um, and and I've done other things that have failed. I have failed at relationships. I have failed in so many ways that I can't count on them. But I am a very futuristic focused person, and I don't. I'm really good at blocking out past failures and just like charging ahead. But not everybody is. Some people get bogged down and sidetracked in those failures. So um, it's how you handle failure that determines whether you will ultimately be a success or that temporary failure will turn into a permanent failure. And that's what we don't want here.
Well, true failure comes when you quit, and then that'll lead to you quitting.
Yes, 100%. Sorry, need to. All right. So the question for me to you is this: how are you going to handle failure? What are you going to do and how are you going to react? Okay? Are you going to throw a pity party? Are you going to blame other people? Are you going to blame your circumstances? Are you going to blame the economy? Or are you going to take ownership of your failure, forget it quickly, but remember what you learned, okay? And fight to fix it. All right? And I challenge you to do this, the last one, fight to fix it, okay? And take ownership of your failure. If first you don't succeed, you are completely normal. I mean, you're completely normal. You're like the rest of us. We all fail constantly. Um, and sometimes, like, in huge ways. But if you get back up and you fight, it's okay. All right? So, again, I've said this, but I'm going to say it again. Failure is just a temporary setback. It's not a permanent state unless you let it become one. So don't. Recap. First F, fatigue. When you're tired, you want to quit. When you're tired, you get discouraged. So give yourself some breaks. When something it becomes very difficult, it is frustrating, understandably. Okay? Frustration is going to lead to discouragement. Maybe get some help. Maybe have somebody help you through the complicated parts. Okay? You're going to fail. Fact of life. It's going to be discouraging. You're going to want to quit. All right? But number four, fourth F word, and then we'll get to the good news, like some stuff to recover. So the fourth word, well, first I got to set it up, is when the opposition gets stronger. Okay? When the opposition gets stronger, fear sets in. That's my fourth word, fear. Fourth F word. Okay? When you start out a new business, or honestly, when you start out anything, there's not a lot of opposition. People don't know about it. People don't care. People don't talk about it. You are not the center of their universe. You're not the center of their attention. They don't care. There's no opposition. All right? But when you get to the middle and you have some failures and whatnot, people may start to be opposition. There's different kinds of opposition. Opposition can come in the form of competition. We'll talk about that a little bit. But opposition can just come in the form of like, hey, I posted something on Facebook and people, they didn't like it and they told me I was doing it wrong. Opposition can come in the form of like your family not supporting you quite as much, or your friends or whatnot, just coming at you, you know. And so this can lead to fear, particularly the fear of failure or the fear of embarrassment. Sometimes it's embarrassment. And the opposition can come from, like I said, many sources, but one source that maybe you weren't thinking about is internal. Like you have an internal critic as well. So it might come from your friends, but it might just come from yourself. Like, oh, last time I did this, I failed. So I think I'm going to fail again. Or I remember in seventh grade when I tried out for the lacrosse team and I got cut. Like, I'm a failure. I can't do it. Like, there's all these internal things that can limit you and cause fear. All right. So, um,
You know that everything that you're talking about, I've started several businesses in the past. I've done things to try to grow these businesses, trying little side gigs, everything like that. And I'll tell you, like I've been through everything that you've talked about, and I've allowed it, the negative side of every single one of those, hit me, and I've quit. Um, at the end of the day, that's just what happens, right? You just quit. You burned out, whatever was up, whatever's going on. Not owning up to your end of the bargain on everything that you said you were going to do. But something I've definitely learned, uh, not just working with you, but over the past few years, is just by reading and studying and really asking yourself questions. I first believe that questions create clarification, right? So anytime that you're facing one of these, you got to ask yourself the hard questions, right? So the number one thing that all these share is mindset, and I think that's really I think that's the key here. Is whenever you're tired, whenever you're frustrated, whenever you have messed up, because you will, and you will suck at something all the time. I
For
mean,
sure.
there's nobody is good at everything. Like you're gonna keep trying different things, even in the inflatable business. You might be really good at you know renting bounce houses, but you might be terrible at the water slide market. I don't know, but whatever the case is, you might be really good at putting something together and just terrible at a lot of things. You might be terrible at a lot of things and keep going and you find out what you're great at. But your mindset is what I think the most important thing is here. Is how you look at everything. The law of polarity, right? The law of polarity says that there's only an inside of this building right now exists because there's an outside. There's only an up because there's a down. So if that's the case, there's only a good because there's a bad. There's only a bad because there's a good. And I think if you just change the way you view things, how you view what you view, will always determine how you do what you do, right?
Yeah.
So whenever you're looking at these things and you're tired, ask yourself why you're tired. Like what is burning you out? Like you need a vacation, you got to rest, and whatever that is. But why are you tired? Are you tired because you're doing, don't mistake movement for momentum, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people they'll get tired because they've been running on the treadmill all day, they're not getting anywhere. Ask yourself, take that break. You got to step back, step out of the room, step out of the area, get yourself a nice long break, have somebody else come in, new fresh set of eyes, and take a look at it and see what's going on. Maybe at that point, it wasn't as crazy as it seemed. Maybe it wasn't as hard. Maybe you just need to tweak something. So I think mindset, and then having a mentor. Like I'm grateful to have mentors, but mindset and mentors I think is really really important here.
Yeah. We're about to cover the 3 steps to help you, and some of those are there. So I'll have you repeat some of that in just a minute, okay? So recap: fatigue, frustration, fear, and failure all lead to discouragement. But you know who gets discouraged first? Those are the people who are listening to the wrong people. Those are the people who are allowing negative voices to creep in. So here's the deal. Often those voices that are telling you like you can't do it and you can't succeed, look at how successful they are. Often they're not successful at all. Okay, so why are they discouraging you? Well, maybe they want to keep you down where they are. Maybe they have failed before, so they don't think it's possible. So they're just trying to, keep you from, getting hurt like they did. Okay. Maybe they just have the personality. So I'm a big believer in personalities. I subscribe to this Enneagram personality test thing, and there's a whole group of people, and the Enneagram says, well, they think over half the world's population is an Enneagram 6. And while they call that a loyalist, it is fear driven. They are worst case scenario thinkers. My wife happens to be one. Okay.
Andrew.
His too. We've tested. So here's what she thinks. So my wife thinks we were driving down the street one day. Here's an example. We're driving down the street one day, and there's this beautiful house right in front of us at like a T intersection. And I said, man, that house is beautiful. And she goes, I could never live there. And I'm like, it's gorgeous. Why not? She's like, somebody is definitely going to run this stop sign. They're definitely going to drive through the yard, and they're going to drive into this house. Like, never crossed my mind. But that's the first thing in her mind, okay? So maybe these negative voices that you're listening to are this 6 personality, and they are thinking about worst case scenario, okay? So instead of thinking about the opportunity to succeed, they're thinking about the opportunity to fail drastically, okay? And they're trying to avoid that drastic thing, okay? It's a personality trait, all right? They don't even know that they're doing it. If they did, maybe they could control it themselves as well. So you're listening to these people whose mindset is that this beautiful house is going to get destroyed by a car, guaranteed. right? And they're telling you can't run your business because like it's going to get destroyed by a car. But the odds are, I drove by the house yesterday. It's still standing and it's still beautiful, and I would still buy it. My wife wouldn't live there with me, but it is what it is. So don't listen to the negative voices, okay? And then some of these voices are successful, okay? But they're telling you you can't because they're jerks, because they're bullies, because they want to make themselves feel good by being the only one that's able to do something. They don't want to bring anybody else with them, okay? It makes them feel good to feel superior to you, all right? And you definitely don't want to listen to those people either, okay? You want to surround yourself with people who will build you up, will tell you that you're doing a good job, that will appreciate your hard work and respect you, okay? So, what secret fears are you harboring that will hold you back? Let me tell you this. Let me take some weight off of you. You don't have to be perfect in business or in life. You don't have to be perfect in business or life. There's something very, very liberating when you realize that you don't have to be perfect, and a few failures here and there are not going to destroy your business. So, what fear is causing you to be discouraged? So I just kind of, those are the 4 F words. We talked about them multiple times. When you're tired, you're going to get discouraged. When you're frustrated because of complications, you're going to get discouraged. When you have small temporary failures, you're going to get discouraged. All this is happening in the middle. And when fear drives you from internal or external sources, you're going to get discouraged. Now, I'm going to make this a little religious. I'm not making it very religious, but Boz and I are both Christian men. We're Christian believers, and so some of this principle, a lot of this came from my pastor preaching a message, and so there'll be a little God in this part, okay? But I'm going to keep it both, like I'll throw a little God in there, but I'll throw you like, hey, if you're not religious, if you don't want to look at it that way, like there's a good worldly point of view to this as well, right? So when you're at the halfway point, God has the answer for you. And if you're not religious, there's still some answers here. Okay, so number one, we're going to give 3 ways. Number one is recognize what is not working and pivot. Okay, recognize what is not working and pivot. You might be doing the right thing, meaning an inflatable business, but you're doing it the wrong way for you to be successful. Maybe you're not advertising properly. Maybe you don't have the right inventory. Maybe you're not communicating with your customers properly. Maybe you're not scheduling yourself properly. Maybe you're not scheduling yourself those rest breaks that we talked about. So maybe you don't throw out the entire rental business, but you get rid of some of the things, you simplify, you pivot to simplify. Maybe you schedule some weekends off so that you and your family can recover and recuperate and you can give it your best. Maybe you change out your inventory. Maybe you just got bad units when you started out. You made a mistake. Bite the bullet. Sell something off, buy something new. Figure out what is working in your business. Okay? Uh, Go read back your text messages or your emails, or think through your phone conversations and think about how you communicated with the customer. Are you communicating professionally? Are you communicating thoroughly? Are you telling them when you're going to show up? Are you doing all of these things? Maybe you're not communicating, as thoroughly as you want. Schedule. Maybe you haven't been scheduling it properly. Maybe you need to stop cleaning throughout the week and clean when you pick up. That's something a lot of people do these days, is they clean when they pick up. Okay, so maybe that frees up sometimes during the week. Um, there's all sorts of things that maybe that you're not doing that you could pivot and change, right? Just a thought. So that's number one, pivot, make some changes. Number two is refocus on God. And if you're not a religious person, let me put it to you this way: refocus on your why. So if you heard the podcast, it was a little quick introduction to Boz the other day. He talked about his why. I'm going to let him kind of run through that again real quick. But he talk about the part where if you refocus on your why, you'll know how to get through these hard times. So
Yeah, no doubt. So anytime you're doing anything, right, you don't you don't just wake up and just decide you're doing something. I mean, maybe you do, but there's always a reason behind it, right? I mean, you you either eat healthy because you want to take care of your body, or you eat unhealthy because you say you don't have any time, right? There's always a reason behind everything you do. So that reason I like to call is your why, and you'll hear that from a lot of different people. And one of the things that you really got to pay attention to is whenever you're frustrated, whenever it's hard, because it will be hard. Whenever life just hits you in the face. There's bad weather, whatever's going on. Dry weeks, whatever. Look back instead of just dropping everything and quitting and trying to find something else to do. Look at your why. Is your why big enough? Is your why strong enough? When your why is bigger than your obstacle, then your obstacle ceases to exist. And I think that's the most important thing. Is whenever you get into business, whenever you set out for a health and fitness goal, whenever career goal, college, whatever it is, your why needs to be bigger, and you can't be selfish about it, right? Now, some things about it will be a little selfish, but not in that way. You have to make sure that your why is big, and if your why is bigger than that obstacle, then it won't be there. You won't have an issue.
Yep. So why did you start the business? You know, did you start the business to because you needed extra income for your family? Did your kids didn't have what they needed? Did you do it because you wanted to be able to take vacations? Now you don't have time to take vacations, but you have some money to take vacations, right? That's you got to set the time off. You got to do it. If the vacation was the why, you got to make sure that you follow through with paying yourself out on that, right? But you got to figure out what the why is. Is it because just internally you've got this drive to be an entrepreneur? Okay. Do you have a bigger goal out there? Is there something you want to do? You got to figure your why out. Once you figure your why out, then that's what you can focus on. So in these times where you're discouraged and you want to quit, you go back to that why and you focus on it, right? Um, and then, so number one is reorganize what isn't working, pivot, potentially simplify, okay? Make changes to do the things that are winning, not the things that are not winning, and then refocus on your why, okay? And then number three is resist discouragement. And this is the one that some of you guys are going to be good at and some of you guys are going to just suck at, okay? Because some people aren't good at this, all right? So discouragement is a choice. You can choose to be discouraged or you can choose to be encouraged. You can choose to smile today. You can choose to frown today. You can choose to have pity on yourself. You can choose to blame other people or you can choose to take ownership. It is a choice. It doesn't always feel like a choice, but it is a choice. Attitude is a choice. It's a matter of focus and perspective. What are you focusing on? What is your perspective? I promise you, if you're focusing on everything that's going to go wrong or that is going to go wrong, you're not going to enjoy this. You're going to become discouraged and you're going to quit. But if you focus on where you're going, what you're trying to do, focus on your why, and just see through to that end vision, you're going to make it. You're going to get it to where you need to be. Okay? So again, you can choose to wallow in it. It's even fun to wallow in self-pity sometimes. Sometimes I like it. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest. I've got a little emo side on me. Sometimes I just woe is me. Okay. A little story here. I guess this was a good appropriate time. Many of you are probably going, "What is in Matt's arm? What's going on with Matt's arm?" Well, here's a quick story. I've had 3 hip replacements in the last 5 years.
And still hasn't quit.
I was an athlete all through high school, played a little college, and then I was a runner and a biker. Loved to mountain bike. I loved to do those Spartan races. And when I was 38 years old, my hip wore out, just plain wore out due to birth defect. Okay, so I was 38, got a hip replacement. All right, and then a couple weeks later, I was feeling good, so I went and played softball, and then all these things, and it started hurting again. I was like, you got to be freaking kidding me. What is going on with my hip? Why is it hurting again? And it was off and on, off and on. About a year and a half after the first surgery, 2 years after the first surgery, I went to a different orthopedic, and I was like, it's just not healing. What's going on? And so they do a bone scan, and it hadn't grafted properly. And they said, you got to get it replaced again. And I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me? So, and all this time I'm running a rental business and starting the manufacturing business. Okay, and so I have to get a second replacement, right? So we get that second replacement. 2 more years go by, and I'm still not feeling good. It's just not healing properly. And I went to 9 doctors last year. I went to nine doctors. I went to every doctor you could think of: neurosurgeons, neurologists, chiropractors, rheumatologists, orthopedics, like all these things, and nobody could figure out what was going on. And they weren't telling me it was in my head, but like some people were thinking it's in my head. And I was like, I can't heal. I can't walk. It's not right. Okay. And so about what, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, my orthopedic said, man, I know that we've taken your blood multiple times and we haven't found anything, but I don't know what else to do. Go draw blood. And he found this number on the sheet that's just slightly off that people have been overlooking for like 5 years now with all the blood that's been drawn. And he thought maybe it was a sign of infection. So we aspirated the hip. Sure enough, it was. And guess what? I had to have it replaced again because I've gotten an infection. So 3 weeks ago, had it replaced for the third time in 5 years. Like, dude, I'm tired. Which has caused fatigue from my hip. I am frustrated because this hip has become complicated. Okay, and it is absolutely a failure. There are things that I can't do. And honestly, for a long time, I was very afraid that this was fear creeped in, that it was going to be the the uh, the end. Like I was never going to play with my kids. I was never going to do these things. All right. So I had all of the 4 F's with this hip thing. But you know what? Never gave up. I never gave up. I kept pushing. I chose to have a good attitude. I chose to compartmentalize and press through on that. So, but there were some times that I wallowed in it, especially with my wife. Probably shouldn't have, because but just like, it's not what it's supposed to be.
I do
You
that
know,
too.
it's fun, but it has to be temporary. You have to be like, okay, I had that hour where I wallowed in it, or a day, or whatever, and then you got to get back to work.
Facts.
Oh, so this, uh, because it was an infection, I have to have an IV drip 4 times a day. This is what you call a PICC line. It's driven into my arm and goes the whole way next to my heart. And when I put the IV into one of these little thing here, it drips in. I'm getting IVs. I have to do it for 6 weeks. It's 3.5 hours a day. It's very time consuming. Is it that long? It's 2.5 hours a day. But it's very, very frustrating. Morning, midday, and night. I had to schedule it around, do it earlier so that make sure we have time for this. So, are you listening to the wrong voices? Are those wrong voices living inside of your own head? Tell them to shut up. If they're outside, tell them very politely. If they're in your own head, tell them very forcefully. You can be really nasty to yourself, and it's fine. Just shut up, self. Where I'm going to achieve. So we're going to kind of wrap it up with a few quick things, unless you have a final story. Great people are ordinary people who refuse to get discouraged. Repeat that. Great people are just ordinary people like you and me that refuse to get discouraged and push on through the discouraging times. They don't quit. They don't have quit in them. They probably don't use the word quit. They have extra level of determination. They live a life with no quit. Do you have an extra level of determination? Better yet, will you choose to have an extra level of determination? So that's kind of what I got.
Yeah, I think
Got any last words?
um, whenever you're going through this, this all reminds me of, I mean, a bunch of different examples and stories that we'll share another time, but one that really stands out. I don't know if you guys ever heard the story that Will Smith talks about whenever he was coming up, about his success and why he's so successful. Whenever he was growing up in Philadelphia, right, born and raised.
On the playground.
Well, he's walking home. Him and his brother walking home from school, and his dad owned a shop. And one day, it was right school got out for the summertime, and They get to the shop and his dad knocked down this whole wall, and he told him and his brother that they're going to rebuild this wall. Now, mind you, they're both uh, very young, like they're young teenagers. I mean, they've never done anything like this. Never done any construction, nothing like that. And so they're like, Dad, you're crazy. I don't know what you think we're doing. He's like, you're going to build this wall. And so, anyways, the story goes they have to figure out how to build this wall. They get frustrated. Their dad kind of shows them a few things. They kind of listen, take notes, whatever. And when they're frustrated and they're going through this, your dad says, "Don't worry about trying to build this wall right now. You're never going to be able to do it." He said, "I just want you to do me something. Every day, come in and lay one brick as perfectly as that one brick can be laid. Every day. Don't worry about the whole wall. Don't worry about what you've never done before. Just do this one thing as perfectly as you can every single day. Before you know, you have a wall." And I mean, I'll let you listen to it. He tells it way better than I do. It's incredible. But in this journey, in business and life, and whenever it sucks, right? You have to have suck before you have success, right? That's how the word's spelled, isn't it? So at the beginning is always going to be that, but just focus on that, laying that one brick as perfectly as you can lay it every single time. Don't look at everything else. So whenever he was talking about compartmentalizing, whenever Matt was kind of giving you the successful stuff that he's done, right? He's always taken it and looked at it for face value and like, okay, forget what everybody else is saying, forget what else is doing. What can I do right now, today, to make this better? What is the one step that I can take? What is the one brick that I can lay? So I think that's something that's I want to encourage you just to lay your brick, right? So as perfectly as you can.
Okay. We don't have a sign off yet, so we're just gonna kind of bring it to an end. Boz, I want to thank you. This was a
Pleasure.
good first one. First episode. I'm sorry I sort of dominated too
No, you're
much.
good.
You brought some good stuff in. I thought that I'd be able to play off you a little bit better. So we'll grow at that. We'll do better to where Boz, we kind of more conversational. But
No, it's
hope
always
you
good.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Big and bright inflatables signing out.